Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Mountaineer Locker Room Then and Now. I'm Greg Crist. And on the other side of me, let me see.
It's
That
somewhere.
side, that side of me is Frank Fear, of course. And we are excited to bring you another great episode of the Mountaineer Locker Room. And Frank, I know you and I talk weekly and pretty much daily. And we just keep getting these good guests through the help of others. And I tell you what, it just gets better, better and better. It's so much fun to talk to these guys, and we're looking forward to tonight, especially.
Yeah, I mean, and I had a long talk, Frank and I. We had a long talk today, and one of the things we talked about, and it's true, we see it every week, is great players and great character people, and we're
Yep.
blessed that way. And I think that's one of the stories we want to tell with this program, and that
Yep.
is that we as Mountaineers can be very proud of the guys who have worn the gold and blue and represented the
Yep.
Mountaineers on the gridiron. Not to speak of negatively or anything about the other sports, but our focus here is obviously on football.
Right. And I had forgotten that I had met Frank down at one of your book signings, and I remember he showing me the helmet he had and all the story behind that, which we'll get to here in just a little bit. But when I saw him pop up, I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember him. We talked down at Charleston, and so it's always fun to connect and reconnect with these guys and hear their stories and get their thoughts on what's going on in today's program. And Frank will be no different. He's got great stories to tell,
Oh boy.
and has quite a legacy that he's left behind himself. So it'll be a lot of fun to talk to him. We're looking forward to it.
Yeah, and we're doing this sort of in the off season, even though fall practice has started.
Yeah.
And you and I talked about this. And if the fans out there haven't seen Coach Brown's most recent interview, which was on Monday the 12th, it's on YouTube. You can find it through Facebook. It was a clinic again
Yeah.
of how to coach and how to lead a football team, and what he's expecting of these guys. And they know. I mean, one of the things he said, and you and I talked about this. Those coaches give feedback daily to those players,
Yep.
and they know exactly what's expected of them. And one of the things he said that I thought was just terrific as an executive. He said this week is the toughest practice because we're a week in, and now we're really getting serious in terms of making the pivot to Penn State. But there are guys that aren't quite ready for that game, but we know they'll be ready in October and November. And so
Right.
it's a two-tier deal. And it's so exciting getting ready for Penn State, and that's going to be a huge game.
Oh yeah. And I every day coming home when I'm late, I listen to Tony Caridi and Greg Hunter and those guys on their show. And today they had some clips of the assistant coaches, ones you talk about getting the responsibility and all that. And again, same mindset, same goals, just matter of fact, to the point. And Tony and them talked about some real positive things that they had seen at the practice. He said, now, normally I don't report anything I see at practice because I stay after the media leaves, just kind of hang around and watch. And he said, I don't report on it. He said, but I saw where the football team itself had posted some stuff on Twitter or whatever, X or whatever platforms they use. He said, so I feel free to talk about this. And he talked about the receiver, and I can't ever remember anybody's name, but it's a boy they got from Oklahoma State. Talked about him and
Oh yeah, Bray.
Bray. Yeah, Bray and Preston Fox.
Oh my
And
God.
he said Bray made some unbelievable catches. Remind him of Kevin White catching the football. And he said he had two or three just phenomenal catches. And then Preston Fox, he said, caught about 50 balls, just solid, never dropped a thing. And was talking about how good the receiving core looked and how good the offense and how confident they looked.
Yep.
So, yeah, that kind of stuff gets you fired up because, like Tony said, there's a whole new vibe around the program this year. He said it's just a different vibe when you go out there to watch practice. He said everybody's involved and taking part in it, no matter what, for on the sidelines or what. But he said there's just a total different vibe to this team this year, and I think we all kind of sense that.
Mhm.
I know we feel differently about going into this year than what we did last year.
Oh yeah. In fact, when Frank and I were talking earlier today, he talked about, just as Chuck Smith did last week, about the parallels between Bobby Bowden and Neil Brown. And one of the things, Frank, and he'll talk more about this, is that Bobby was, and Mickey's talked about this. Unfortunately, he can't be with us tonight because of illness, and we wish him well. But that Bobby would focus on the development of the person, the full package, not just football. And Coach Brown is the same way. And he talked about Braden. He talked about Jaden Bray. Says this guy's got NFL potential.
Yeah.
And one way he can make an NFL squad is through special teams.
Yeah.
And he said we're using him on special teams because he said it's likely that's that film will get into a GM's player development box and to look at him. So I mean, you're absolutely correct. But at any rate, we got to bring Mr. Nester here. He's in the back room and listening to us, and I can see him smile.
Yeah, while we're getting him in here, we want to mention everybody, make sure you like and subscribe YouTube. We appreciate that. That helps us keep the program going. And also we want to thank Mike Dunlap and, of course, Mark Parsons for helping us and everything that we do here. They are instrumental in getting us guests and keeping us abreast of what's going on. These guys know more people and know more stuff than me and Frank do put together. So we're thankful for those guys, and we appreciate them. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get our guest in here. Of course, we're talking about Frank Nester. We advertised one of the all-time greats at WVU, kicker, and has some phenomenal feats that he accomplished while he was at WVU. But not only that, just a really nice person. And like I said, I got to meet him down in Charleston. I actually had forgotten until I saw him, and I'm like, hey, I remember that guy. Super nice fella, and we appreciate you, Frank, for joining us tonight.
Well, it's my pleasure to be with you guys. You do such a great job, especially bringing us old people back to life again.
Well, the show is called Then and Now, so we like to include you guys. And one of the things Frank and I talk about all the time is how much pleasure we get out of talking to you guys from the past days at WVU, and how impressed we are by the accomplishments that's been made afterwards, and what you've done today and everything. And it's just so refreshing to hear the stories. And at WVU, and especially in your era, we feel like it's important to keep these legacies alive. And people may read this, he kicked 6 field goals in a game, or he's the 9th all-time career leading field goal kicker, or whatever. They may read those things, but to actually get to see you and hear you talk about it, that's something special. And we're thankful for that.
Yeah. And Frank, I don't know if you can see it, I think you should, but there's Mary Smith. Mary and I have been talking back and forth. We showed that great touchdown by her dad, Richard Nicholson. And there is, she says hi. She's online tonight.
Yeah. I'll say hi, Mary. Good to hear from you.
Fans all around watching. Frank, let's talk about how you, I know we were talking before we got on the air, a little bit about how you ended up at WVU, talk about your high school days a little bit and all that whole story from, that time back at high school, right on up through you got recruited at WVU or ended up at WVU.
My high school career wasn't that exciting or stood out or anything like that. It was kind of a mundane deal. We had a brand new coach when I was a sophomore, Fred Taylor, who went on to have a fantastic high school career, won some state championships. And
I remember Fred.
And I coached some fantastic players from Ravenswood, one of them being Joe Jellick. And I'm sure that name comes up now and then about how tough he was. And there was no doubt about his ability or his toughness. But I was a starting halfback as a sophomore. I was one of the fastest players on the team, and I got hurt in practice, and so I got a hip pointer, and those are something that you don't bounce back from very often or quickly. So I didn't play very much the rest of the year as a sophomore. I did attempt an extra point against Point Pleasant, and it was blocked. We would have been ahead, and they came back and scored, and they missed their extra point. And so that was the only attempt I had as a sophomore. Then as a junior year, I was a running back, but I alternated. And then I actually started kicking. And I'll be honest with you, if I had been coach, I would have told me to find another job, because I was only 24 out of 36 on extra points. That's not what you want. But I kept at it. My senior year, I was 34 out of 37 kicking extra points. And but I have to tell you, I never kicked an extra point or field goal to win a football game. And we went, my junior and senior year, we went 9-1. So we were 18-2 in my junior and senior year. And we missed out on the playoffs because there were only 2 teams taken at that time.
Yep.
And we finished third both years. So, that was my stint as a high school football player. My senior year, though, I have to tell you, I was playing running back. I got speared in the back against Wahama. I went to the hospital in a great deal of pain. I couldn't feel my left leg, and I ended up having 5 shots to kill the pain, and got out of the hospital on Sunday, came to school on Monday, went to see a physical therapist, and these were the words he told me. He said, "Tell me when it hurts," and I told him, "You'll know." And he said, "Well, I'm going to tell you this. If you're going to be laying around like this and you don't start getting up and working to the point you can stand the pain, you're going to be an invalid." And he said, "So we're going to put you to the point where you can stand the pain, and we'll go from there." So Friday night, I kicked 5 extra points. I couldn't run, couldn't do anything except run out and kick extra points. Wow. And so I did that for 5 games until the Point Pleasant Ripley games, and then I was able to come back and play in those last 2 games. That was, so as far as impressing somebody with my ability to do anything, I would say that was kind of difficult to. But although I did have interested from, like I said, Fairmont and Glenville, but where I did get some interest was my wrestling. And it just so happens that today I ran into the coach from West Virginia University that invited me to be a walk-on to wrestle at West Virginia University. His name was Coach Neediff, George Neediff. And I told you earlier, he was an all-state wrestler, all-state football, then went to WVU and played both sports up there, and then went on to coaching wrestling in the southern part of the state. And when the coach retired at WVU, they asked George to come back up, and he did. And he saw me wrestle, and he thought, I was a pretty good wrestler, but for him to offer me anything, I would have had to win a state championship, which I came up a little bit short. But he invited me to come up to WVU, and that's the first time I had given any thought of attending West Virginia University at all. And I always give it considerations in the back of my mind. But Coach Carlin came and spoke at our all sports banquet. He started Butch Rourke to a scholarship, and I sat right with Coach Carlin, Coach Marshall, and the Rourke family, and my dad, and they, had a conversation. And my dad asked Coach Marshall if they were looking at kickers, and Coach Marshall told him no. Basically, they would look at somebody that was already on scholarship, maybe play another position. And as I come to find out, that's basically how they looked at kickers back then. And I think basically the first kicker that wasn't probably another position player was Chuck Kinder. And I'm good friends with Chuck, and I was reading what he said, and he said that people laughed at me. Said, "You're here to do what? You don't play another position," that kind of thing. Yeah. So anyway, I knew what I was in for, and so they promised they'd have Coach Evans come down and take a look. Well, 2 weeks later, I got a call from Coach Evans, and I went out and did an audition for him. And he said, "Well, we can't promise you anything." And I said, I already know that story. He said, but I can say we'll give you a chance. So that's the first time I thought about going to WVU and going out for kicking. Now, you got to remember, this is May when this happened. I hadn't even applied to WVU yet. So that's when I got things together and applied. And as the summer went along, I practiced. And then came time to report, and I reported, ran into Coach Evans. And he said, you're here, you're going out? He said, why didn't you tell me? I would have got you through registration. And, you know, he said, but remember, since you're registering, no classes after 3 o'clock because we're going to practice. So I went out and, you know, but here's the thing. The first thing they told me was, we need bodies. Can you play defense? So I went up and they said, you can practice kicking after, but we need defensive players. So I ended up playing defense and as a, you know, cornerback and some strong safety and stuff. But that first week of practice, I didn't have a helmet. And that brings to my helmet story. And I'll go get my helmet.
Yeah. For those people who are watching, this is one of the all-time best West Virginia unit. And I'll just give it a little intro here, Frank. You know, they say football players have big heads, right?
Right.
So you tell the story.
Well, anyway, they did not have a helmet small enough to fit me. And so I practiced, and at that time, I'll just give you an idea. I don't know if you can get a load of how thick my glasses were.
Yep, we can see that.
Okay. Well, I was legally blind, and I started wearing contact lenses after when I signed up for the draft. I decided I was legally blind, and they sent me to a specialist, and he confirmed it. So we can make contact lenses for you. And so basically that's what I did. So I wore contact lenses instead of these thick glasses.
I think Bill McKenzie said they looked a lot like the bottom of a Pepsi bottle.
Yeah, I'll leave it to Bill. He also said he couldn't see to the end of his nose. So there you go. So anyway, I was literally practicing, drills with no helmet and my contact lenses in.
Oh, God.
Jeez. And we were doing dummy tackling. And I ended up cutting my forehead, just a scratch, okay? But one day of course, this was the first year they put AstroTurf at WVU on the field and everything. And we practiced out next to the Coliseum. And one day, Coach Evans says, let's go in and take a look at how the big boys do this. So we all piled on the buses and went in. And one of the rules that Coach Carlin had was if you're on Mountaineer Field, you're wearing a helmet. I'm like, okay. So everybody lined up along the sidelines, and there I am on a knee right in front of everybody. And he's looking as he comes down to everybody, and he gets to me. And he looked at me and he said, son, where is your helmet? And I said, well, Coach, you don't have one small enough to fit my head. And he just looked at me like, how's that, Well, Carl Roberts was the equipment manager. And he said, Carl, this boy says we don't have a helmet small enough to fit his head. And Carl said, that's right, Coach. And then his eyes got real big and he said, what's your name? And I told him my name was Frank Nester. And he said, where did you play football? And I said, at Ravenswood High School. And he immediately knew, Fred Taylor. I said, yes, sir. He said, what color were your helmets? And I said, white. And he said, that's what we were wearing up at WVU. And he said, so you had a helmet down there? And I said, yes, sir. He said, Carl, you get on the phone to Fred Taylor and you get his helmet up here so he'll have a helmet to wear. And well,
and there it is.
He sent my white helmet up
Oh my goodness.
And it was like, are you kidding me? And I got a helmet. And
Yeah.
Carl put the stickers on it and the gold and blue. And I wore this helmet for 2 years.
Wow.
We're moving over here. And
Yeah.
and I didn't give it another thought. After 2 years, I guess my head swelled up. And I had a helmet from that time on. But it was kind of funny. I had forgotten about this helmet because I was there for 14 years. Anyway, after my senior year was over, Carl said, hey, come back to the equipment room. I got something for you. I had no idea. So I go back to the equipment room, and he goes back in the back, and he comes out, and he puts this helmet, sets it right up on the door, and said, this is your helmet. And I'm going, what do you mean this is my helmet? He said, this is the helmet that Ravenswood sent up for you to wear when we didn't have one to fit you. And I've kept it. It doesn't belong to us. It belongs to you.
That's great.
So I've had this thing for over 50 years now.
That's great.
If you can take a look inside of this, you can see this is a tremendous suspension helmet.
Oh yeah, heck yeah.
No padding except for the cheek pads. I guess that's kind of a nylon suspension helmet.
I sorry to interrupt, but I can't help but think I coached high school football for like 4 years, and then I got a middle school coaching job. So I coached 7th and 8th graders for 12 years. And inevitably, every year you had a couple of those kids that you'd be running drills, and you look, and their helmet would be twisted around sideways while they're running down the field, and they're trying to see. They can't see. I can't help but think of you when you tell that story that you're out there playing defensive back, helmets bouncing around all over. I just get that picture in my mind.
Well, I never got to that point. They
never got there.
They came up with a solution, and I was really pleased about that.
That's great story.
I never kicked any during my freshman year, except because we couldn't play varsity then either.
Right.
That's fresh. But we went down to play Virginia Tech, and I was on the traveling squad. But being in a unique position, I didn't travel on the bus. I traveled in a car with Joe Pendry, who was a grad assistant.
Wow.
At that time. Heavens knows, and like anybody else who knew that the fantastic career and that he had in the football coaching profession. I had no idea. We were just driving down the road, and we had a flat tire, and it's raining. He changed it. We got down to Virginia Tech at midnight. The bus had left before us.
So why were you different? Why'd you ride in the car? What was the?
Was on scholarship.
Okay. Find your way.
We're looking for where the team is supposed to be.
Yeah. And Frank, you didn't get a scholarship until your sophomore year. Is that correct?
That's right. It's second semester.
Isn't that something? Yeah. What's interesting about this to me, and I hope it is to the viewers, is that first of all, you can see that Frank's a tremendously engaging guy, and then you think, well, this guy must have been a third stringer, maybe like a Rudy that played maybe once. But, you look at let me put up his profile here. But, and in fact, the other thing I wanted to mention, and we had a conversation about this with the viewers before the show, you brought it up. This was really about the time that place kickers became specialists. And the guy you replaced is Jim Braxton. Who had to quit because it was so difficult for him to score a touchdown, then run off the field and change his shoe to come back and kick extra points. But it's just amazing. But I want to put this up because for those people, I mean, this is just a beginning. I sent this to you, Frank, and it doesn't cover everything. But when you think about it, you played in 34 games. Made 91% of your PATs and almost 70% of your field goal attempts. we're going to show a film in a second of your incredible game in '72 against Villanova. You still hold the university record for the most field goals in one game. You ranked ninth all time of field goals made. You mentored your successor, who had maybe the biggest field goal probably in WVU football against Pitt to win the game. You're in several halls of fame. You were named to the All-Decade team in 1970. You were identified by John Antonick to the all-time West Virginia native WVU Mountaineer football team. Longtime educator, involved now in the Special Olympics. You began your career in Parks and Rec. It's just, it's amazing. We talk about this all the time, Greg. To see these guys, our resumes are like this, and their resumes are like that.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating to look at. And of course, he sells himself short, a little humble, but those are some pretty nice accomplishments that you had at WVU.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that time. Your success. Talk about kicking those field goals, 6 in one game, being the 9th all-time career leader at WVU. Talk a little bit about success.
Well, I do have to correct you. I am a native West Virginian. I never lived in Richmond, Virginia. Somehow
that got in there.
Huh?
Yeah. That one. I found that in multiple places. I should have asked you. They said you were born, but you weren't born in Richmond, Virginia.
No, I was born in Richwood.
Yeah. Everybody thinks Richmond's part of West Virginia anyway. So.
Yes. But I want to make sure that everybody knows, except my family, who's going, he wasn't born in Richmond. He was born in Richwood. I never got to be a lumberjack, but I was a red devil. Well, I've got to bring somebody over here. Come here, wife. I'm going to bring Ann over here because I introduce you to my wife.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's great.
Absolutely.
Where is she? Okay.
There she is.
Hi, Ann.
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
She was an integral part of my time at West Virginia University. She was a cheerleader up there, so I want to let all you kickers know that you get the best when you're a kicker. You get the prettiest and smartest girl. So
always land a cheerleader if you're a kicker, right?
Right. We had our 49th wedding anniversary back in May, and
congratulations.
I won't say anything bad about her. You can bet on that during this interview. Okay.
Well,
thank you.
Congratulations to both of you.
Nice
And here, Mary says hello, Ann.
Again.
Oh, tell Mary I said hello too. Hi, Mary.
Okay. Well, anyway, I took the long way around at WVU as well. After my freshman year, I went out for spring football and all that kind of stuff, and but I mean, I was lining up against Jim Braxton, Eddie Williams, Bob Gresham, and I was playing defensive halfback at 165 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah, I just went through the defensive back drills and everything like that, and I got to tell you, they ran a sweep, and I was on the other side of the field, and Gresham was running the ball, and I thought, well, I've got to go tackle that guy. Well, I ran all the way across the field. I stuck my head in front of him like you're supposed to, hit him with my left shoulder, and I thought I was going to die. I thought I'd hit an oak tree, and I separated my left shoulder, and I got up just like any Mountaineer football player would, and I ran back to the other side of the field.
And he was a running back, and you also said you had to go up against George Duke Henshaw, who was a mountain man.
Duke played defense, and thank goodness that I didn't have to run at him too. So that was good. But he is one of those players that I thought was the most intimidating people on that football team. I swear I thought he was a coach. He presented himself, with like he knew exactly what needed to be done and when to do it and everything. I thought, this guy's a coach. They said, well, no, George is one of our football players. I'm going, okay. But if you looked at him, he looked like he was old enough to be a coach, but I don't know how old a coach was supposed to be either. Because I remember I went with Penry and he was a grad assistant and didn't have any idea what he was going to be. And George, of course, had a great career as a coach later on, and starting there at West Virginia University. So anyway, lost my chain of thought there. Anyway, I had to go over to line up again. I give the ball to Eddie Williams. Play. So I run over there to tackle Eddie Williams, and this time I had to hit him with my right shoulder, so I had to put my head behind him. And I put my leg in front of him and just flipped him over. And somebody started yelling at me. I don't know if it was from the stands or one of the players saying, "What kind of tackle was that?" And I said, "It's the kind of tackle you make when you have a left shoulder separated." And I went back to doing what I was doing. But that was one of the things that I did because I wanted to play. And if you get hurt, you don't tell anybody. And if you want to play, you play where they tell you to.
Yep.
And I remember Braxton being an up blocker on punt team, and I was on that scout squad, and I ran through between the guard and the center, and I was standing next to Kim West when he punted the ball, and they started yelling at Jim about not hitting me, and they start telling him about, you've got to pick up the first guy that shows inside. And they started yelling at me about, where did you come from? And I told them, everybody line up and let's do this again. And I was thinking, okay, well, I ran through the same hole, and Jim Braxton stepped over and hit me with a forearm right in the chin. And as Garrett Ford would tell you, he said, I saw your head stop and your feet went straight out and you went down on the turf like a pancake. And I said, yeah, and I got up too, didn't I? He said, yeah. Got up, you came back, and I asked you, are you all right? And you said, yeah. And I told you to sit out 3 or 4 plays because I could tell in your eyes you weren't okay. Well, I couldn't open my mouth for 2 days. I'm telling you, when Braxton hit you, it was, you remember things like that. But I practiced kicking after practice, all through the spring and then into the fall. But Braxton was the kicker.
Yeah.
And you're right. It was a burden on him. But I do have to tell you, Bill Samuelson stepped up.
That's right. Yep.
I think he was an all-East guard.
Yeah.
But he kicked extra points. As a matter of fact, he made 19 extra points in a row.
Yeah.
And he didn't change shoes. But to me, he did yeoman's service because, he may be out there on a 90-yard or 80-yard drive or however it was, and then to line up and have the composure to kick extra points just blew me away.
Exactly.
And so I give him props for that.
Yeah.
And
but you got to talk about that Villanova game, Frank, because that's what you're known for.
Right. But I got to tell you, the first game I kicked in, I kicked my field goal, first field goal, and I made it. And I just ran off the field, and all these guys were screaming at me, hey, you've made your first field goal you've kicked in college. I said, guys, that's the first field goal I ever kicked. And I heard him. We're a major college football team, and our kicker just made his first field goal ever. Anyway, well, the next game I kicked another one, and the next game I kicked another one. So I was 3 for 3 starting out that 1971 season.
Yeah.
And then Bill missed 2 kicks against Pitt. And I was standing next to Bobby, and he looked at me and says, from now on, you're kicking everything. But you're right. He had this goal of having a specialist. So I happened to be at the right place at the right time with the right coach.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that I would have been on another team, another coach that I'd ever had the opportunity. And he gave a lot of walk-ons the opportunity to prove themselves. And I was just one of them.
When I saw this picture and had read some of the stories about Bowden's hesitancy with kickers and that sort of thing, I saw this picture and I thought he's sitting there saying, "Who is this guy? What am I doing here with this guy?" That's what he looked like.
Yeah.
Well, I kicked the rest of the year in 1971.
Right.
Then to make a long story short, they signed Emil Ross in January from Steubenville Catholic. And everybody started, whoa, 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 your job's in jeopardy and all this kind of stuff. And I'm going, okay, well, I also had a academic problem at that time. And when I came back from Christmas break, Coach Bowden called me in the office and he said, "I don't understand it. We checked with all your professors. You never missed a class. What was the deal?" And I said, that academic program isn't really what I want to do. And he goes, "Yeah, but you could have told us about it." He said, "Because you're going to have to go to summer school and you can take a couple classes." He says, "Your GPA is fine, but you need a couple more classes for hours." And so then they signed Emil Ross, and I'm going, okay. And that's when they gave me a scholarship. And so I went that whole second semester, going to parks and recreation classes, because that was really what I wanted to get into. And I started making good grades and everything went well. But by the time spring was over, I was thinking, I'm not coming back.
Oh.
And I had some really good friends, Wib Newton, Jerry Schultz, and they encouraged me to go to the Fellowship and Christian Athletes summer camp. They said, "Great, you'll lead a group of guys and you'll hear some great speakers and everything." I thought, okay, well, I'll go. And I did. Everything was just like they said it would. I heard some great testimonies. I heard a lot of kids that were just on fire for the Lord Jesus Christ. Just all there was. And even though I'd gone to church, I didn't drink, smoke, swear, any of that stuff. My life just wasn't where it was supposed to be. And I had met Ann, really nice girl, but I guess I really liked her, and I spent more thinking about her than academics and stuff like that. Anyway, I was sitting there. Coach Bowden gave the closing speech or invitation on that Monday, and he talked about Matthew and how we're all blessed with talents. And he took Danny Bugg and said, "Danny's talented. He can catch a ball. He can run. He can do this." And Frank Nester over here, he's a kicker. We don't know if he can do anything else, but we know he can kick a football. And I was sitting there thinking, he doesn't know that I'm about to tell him I'm not coming back in the fall.
Yeah.
And then he said, "God has blessed you with these talents, and he wants you to be a light in the world to bring glory and honor to him through those talents he's blessed you with." And I was sitting there knowing that I was going to give that up. And so when he said, "You can't do that. You've got to ask God to come in and take control of life and get it in order." And that's exactly what I did. And I remember that May 31st, 1972.
Wow.
Anyway, I went to summer school. And my roommate was Harry Blake, and Don Sauer was an All-American cross-country runner. And Harry and I stayed in the same visitors' locker room. That's where we stayed, in the visitors' locker room, right next to the swimming pool and the weight room and Mountaineer field. And he taught me how to run, and he would catch my kickoffs and all this kind of stuff. We had a great summer, because Harry, well, my gosh, he was, track athlete of the year, record holder and 100-yard dash or whatever they ran back then. He was record holder on, just fantastic, and didn't look like he was running fast at all. And he taught me how. I ran a 4.6 40-yard dash in the fall when I went back. And it was like, okay, but I also lost 11 pounds too. But I couldn't get Harry to go swimming with me. Wouldn't go swimming. He didn't need to. He had all the tools. One of the nicest, and I still have, he's a friend of mine on Facebook, and just a fantastic person. And anyway, when fall ball came, I was ready. And guys were asking me, what do you think about Emil Ross coming in? And I go, so fellas, I have somebody on my side now that I've never had on my side before. And they said, I said, Jesus Christ, I only have to worry about me. I can't worry about what Emil's doing. Anyway, he and I became friends. I took him to the county fair up there, and we had a ball, and everything was, really good between us. He kept saying the Pack is back because he's a Green Bay Packer fan. I said, you need to stop saying that. Anyway, but he was a good kicker, but he just never broke through. I think he kicked a few extra points or something, but never really broke into it until, Bill McKenzie kind of pushed him out of the way.
Yeah.
But practice was going pretty well. I wasn't worried about anything. And I had to go to Coach Bowden, who had mentored me over the summer. He called me in the office and he said, you know what I want you to do? I want you to become the best kicker in Mountain this year. And then he said, no, I want you to be the best kicker in Mountaineer history. And he said, well, you might as well just be the best kicker in the nation this year. I missed that by 2 points. And he wrote out, this is what you're going to do. Had a little card, and he said, this is what you're going to do, this is what you're going to do, this is what you're going to do. And not that I couldn't write it down, but he wanted to make sure he's making a point. And so when I came back, I had to go ask him if I could go to my sister's wedding. And he said, well, if you don't go to your sister's wedding, I better not see you here around Mountaineer Field. And that was one of our big scrimmages. So I went to my sister's wedding. And lo and behold, Emil kicked a pair of 42-yard field goals. And so when I got back, the chalkboard was full of stuff. Back then, they filled the chalkboard full of everything, I said, hey, you feeling the heat? All this kind of stuff. And I said, I can't worry about what he's doing. The next time we had a kicking contest, he didn't do so well, and I did. And the next game was Villanova. And that could have been him, but it wasn't. It was me. And all I have to do is say, I had the opportunity. And since then, we have kickers I wouldn't even go out on the field to kick against. Paul Woodside, my goodness gracious, he kicked 30 field goals in one season. And I only kicked 25 in 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how you can even think about competing against somebody like that. It was utterly amazing. But when I went out on the field that day, I didn't know I was going to attempt 7 field goals, and neither did anybody else. But like I said, these guys that have come after me, including our kicker who kicked that field goal to beat Pitt, Bill McKenzie. People ask me about what is one of the highlights of your career, and I said, when I watch that ball go through those uprights. And they go, you like that? And I said, I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about when Bill McKenzie kicked that ball against Pitt.
Yep.
And I was standing right there next to Bobby. And you know what he asked me before Bill kicked that? He said, can he make it? And my answer was, it's within his range. Really committing myself. And I mean, pandemonium, but it was one of my highlights. And But
tell you what, I've read some about that, and you guys that jostling back and forth. Had I known the stories Bill McKenzie was telling prior to that kick, I'd have been even more of a nervous wreck than what I was when he kicked it, because funny stories come out of that particular episode in your all's lives.
oh well, I'll tell you, that was something else. Bill was only 2 of 5 for field goals, I believe, at that time.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, I helped him because Chuck Clausing asked me to help him, and just like he said, what did you do in high school? Well, he kicked squid kicks on kickoffs. I don't think they ever attempted an extra point, but Chuck told me, Coach Clausing said, this kid's got a strong leg. Can you work with him? Well, I worked with him a little bit, and if you watch him kick, he kicked just like I did.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like
same.
that's seeing the same thing. But that the game I went out there and I kicked a field goal, you know.
Yeah.
And
right.
we scored a touchdown. Kerry Marbury scored a touchdown. And then I think I kicked another field goal in the second quarter. Can't even remember because I was doing what I was supposed to do. And I think the field goal that I missed was like the fourth one. And then I kicked 3 more. But I was just doing that. It was just what I was supposed to do. I went out and did my job. I didn't know my job was going to be like that. And that's what I'm saying. Somebody at WVU, if they had the opportunity to do that, would have done it. Okay? Or even around the United States. And of course, like Godlak, he did what he did, and I came along. And of course, Juskowicz, the last kick that I kicked in that game landed about 4 feet from Juskowicz.
Wow.
Yeah. And he came into the locker room, and I'd never met him before. And of course, he was the first soccer style kicker there. And then after they came from Kinder to Juskowicz to Braxton, and and then to Bill, who was a straight on kicker as well, and then me, and then they tried Emil for a few kicks, and then went to Bill. After Bill, it was all soccer kickers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
After that, it's always been soccer.
Yeah.
And so as that game went along, I was kicking the ball into the end zone. I mean, it was fantastic. I was having the time of my life, and it got down to where I tied Juskowicz for the 5 field goals. I was like, this is something else. Well, I didn't realize it, but things were, winding down. We were all just getting ready to go in. Game was over. And it was 23 to 6 at the time, or 22 to 6 at the time. And all of a sudden, Bowden says, field goal. So we ran out on the field. And I lined up, and I got ready to kick. And all of a sudden, there's whistles everywhere. And I'm going, what happened? They said, they jumped off sides. Moved 5 yards up. Okay. So I lined up, and I kicked it through the goal post. I picked up my tee, and I started running towards the sidelines. And I said, hey, I got to kick off. And they said, no, game's over.
That's right. It was the last play.
The guy jumped off with 1 second left to go in the game. Wow. We would have never kicked that field goal if he hadn't jumped off sides.
Wow.
I sat there and I'm going, my gosh, just think, I wouldn't even have been here if it hadn't been the decision that I made back in May and asked God to take control of my life and get my act together.
So did Bowden recognize that you were going to set a record or break a record?
I have no idea.
I'm wondering why I kicked
no
in that
idea.
situation.
But I knew on Monday, and I've got the ball right over here with his signature on it. He signed it for me. And I mean, can you imagine what the offense felt like? I mean, we had Danny Buggs and Marshall Mills and
that's right.
The gunner, Galiffa, and my gosh, Kerry Marbury. I mean, what an offense. I mean, I kicked 6 field goals that game, okay? And I only kicked 5 more the rest of the year.
That's right.
And they scored 53 touchdowns. That's how come I had so many extra points. And of course, I also had Garrett Ford, who was my coach.
Yeah.
And when I went out as a sophomore, he would tell me, get me ready when we crossed 50-yard line. And then that year, when we crossed the 40-yard line, he'd say, get ready. And then my senior year, he would wait until we crossed the 30-yard line, and then he'd tell me to get ready. And I said, what's the deal with? He said, I know you by now. You're not going to ask me to go out there. I'm not going to ask you out there and try to kick something you can't kick.
But Frank, you mentioned some of those players, and
oh gosh,
yeah, I mean, you look, and this is just a small list of the great players. I mean, Doug Charlie was a great defensive back with Dave Morris and Leon Jenkins. My God, what a defensive back! And Bernie Galiffa. Oh, what a quarterback!
Oh yeah.
Oh my God, Kerry Marbury, Pete. We haven't talked about Pete Wood, who was parade All-American from Southern West Virginia. He was phenomenal. And I remember Billy Joe Mantooth. His name fit who he was.
If he didn't have a bloody nose after the ball game, he hadn't played.
Dan Hannas was another great player. Terry Voigthofer was the co-captain of the 71 team. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just Tom Zukowski was going to be with us in a few weeks.
Oh gosh, he's a great fella.
He really is. Frank Samsa, who unfortunately died young, together with Bernie, passed away young. Nate Stevens. These are great players. Danny Buggs.
Oh gosh, yes. Danny's is still involved in the ministry down there around Atlanta.
Yeah.
And John Spraggins, we used to call him Big Mouth. My goodness. You could hear him all over Mountaineer Field. Andy Peters, and Chuck Smith, Lakowski, Steve Dunlap, just a tackling machine.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah. But I got to mention Bernie. Bernie is the one player, and this is not me. This is Bernie telling me. He said, I'm the one that went to tell coach that you needed to be seen. He needed to watch you after practice kicking. So if anybody takes credit for your, breakthrough, it's me. And that's what Bernie told me. So I got to give it to him. Leon Jenkins was my lifeline, because when I got up to working just as a kicker, guess who still had to go through tackling drills? Because I kicked off.
Yeah.
And they said, you're going to have to stay there. Leon saved my life. When we went through dummy tackling and stuff, he let me hit him and he hit me without killing me. So, and Leon, I got a friend who talks to Leon about every day. He goes to church with me. And I say, you make sure you tell Leon howdy for me.
He's living in the Columbus area, great guy. And then you mentioned the coaches. And, that's just a smattering of the great coaches. Henshaw went on to coach. Joe Pendry, unbelievable. Donnie Young was there for, my God, probably 30 years. And I'll tell you, you mentioned Garrett Ford. Oh, yeah. And I can't tell you how many African-American athletes that Garrett Ford helped come to WVU. He was just an incredible person, obviously, still is.
Oh, yeah, well, he was our scout coach, and he had a joke to tell us about every time we huddled up. And then when it was, he wouldn't tell us the punchline until we came back from the next play. And we're all, here's the thing. The coaches were going, why is the scout team hustling back to the huddle? And they said, we want to hear the punchline of the joke Garrett was telling us. I played tennis against Garrett. Can you imagine?
Oh my God.
260 pounds serving the ball to little old me. Gosh, I backed up against the fence just so I wouldn't get hurt. Yeah. He was a good man. I liked him.
Oh, great guy.
Went to his retirement party up there. That's when we had a big two-hand touch football game, and I don't know how many players went back, and it was the legends against the all pros or something. I was on Pat McAfee's team, and he said he wanted to play defense, and Pat White was on the other team. So he went over there on defense, lined up, and Pat McAfee ran all over the field, and I mean, Pat White ran all over the field, and McAfee chasing him, never getting a hand on him until he just ran out of gas.
Not surprising.
Oh, yeah, it wasn't surprising. Everybody was laughing about it.
Yeah.
And you can see McAfee out there trying to chase down Pat White. I mean, it was amazing. But I mean, the players that they had, and like you're talking about the coaches, I had 3 different coaches, 3 different years, and they were Hayden Buckley. Remember that name?
Sure.
He liked to razz me about tackling drills and stuff all the time about it. And he's the one that said, if you're on the kickoff team, you're going to learn how to tackle. Well, and it's a good thing I did. I made 9 tackles on kickoffs. The one I remember the most was against Penn State. It looked like Moses had parted the sea in front of me. We were up at Penn State, and I was right in the middle where I was supposed to be. And I know this guy thought I was going to jump out of the way. And he hit me, and I put my face in his chest, and he knocked me about 5 yards, but I wrapped him up, and I tackled him. And I think he was just as surprised. I thought he was going to cut one way or the other. I just was in no man's land. And he tried to run over me because I didn't go anywhere. And all the guys on the field thought I was dead. Ran off the field, and then Coach Calicut ran over and said, "Hey, are you all right?" I said, "Yeah." I said, and they scored a touchdown on the next play before I even caught my breath. You know, that's the game that Capoletti's Joey had asked him to score 5 touchdowns.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Hey, Frank, we talked earlier. I can't remember what it was, but and Greg and I were talking about this the other day. We could talk about all the games. There's so many exciting ones, but it's that Miami game that sticks out. So we've got film here, but and the thing about this game is guys that had not really were not that well known or performed, including Ben Williams, who was the quarterback, who was like, I don't know what he was, 5 for 25 the week before against Penn State. And these guys, and Ron Brown had a career game with 11 tackles. So let's watch this film, and you were saying to me that the field was unbelievably slippery. But let's run the film, and then you talk about it here. So yeah, that's Danny Bugs, and then, nobody really knew who this Greg Williams was. He was a defensive player. Both quarterbacks were hurt, and you can watch him here. Look at him run. That's a fake. There he goes. Yeah. Touchdown. Bad camera work here. Look at him run.
You know why he ran like that?
No.
He's scared.
Scared to death.
He had the right attitude about not getting hit.
And this was down in the Orange Bowl playing Miami. Yeah. It was a big game. You got all kinds of stories about this. But he could run. Boy, oh boy. Mm-hmm. And here's the game winner with Marshall Mills, the only catch he had all night, with 20 seconds left.
Yeah. Yeah, that was when we came in the night before. I think the thing that really caught all our eye, there was a big fence out in the middle of the field, and they had the police officer there with the police dogs, and these guys were all dressed up, and they told us we could come and watch, but don't move. And they said, because these dogs will attack movement. These guys, they had the thick pads on their arms and full body protection, and those dogs were vicious. And we got to watch them, and we were like, "Holy cow!" But the longer we stood there, you know, the more the dew settled on the field, and then we started practice, and come to find out that was really slick. And I was having a real hard time planting my left foot, and it would slide, and I had a hard time kicking the ball like I wanted to. And I thought, well, hey, we're playing a night game tomorrow, and this is going to be the same way. Well, I had trouble on kickoffs too, and I think it was who did I tell you that was? I kicked off one of the kickoff receiving team, and I told you who it was, and now I can't.
I thought it wasn't Marshall Mills.
No,
Okay.
He wasn't deep on the kickoff team.
Yeah.
Anyway, he come running at me, and I broke down, and he put a move on, and his feet just went. Whoosh,
Yeah.
and he slid down, and we're going, wow, if this is game time, this is going to be the same way. Anyway, we went down there. We had more ice than you'd ever want to see in your life on the field, because it was so humid and hot that, I mean, you broke a sweat sitting in the locker room. And by the time you get on the field, it's just running all over you. And so we had guys coming off the field, getting cooled off and everything else. And I went out after we scored our first touchdown, and I promptly missed the extra point because my left foot slid past the tee. And I was like, oh, this is great. That's the only extra point I missed during my senior season. And here we are, losing the game 14-13. And Ben was the first African-American quarterback to start at WVU.
That's right.
I don't think you knew that. Maybe
I
not.
didn't.
And he was basically forced into service because of injuries and stuff. But you can see that he was a good athlete, obviously. But anyway, as they threw that touchdown pass, and I was thankful. As Bobby put it, he said, wow, he said that pass, that reception, that was fantastic. Well, I went out, kicked the extra point, and Bobby was signaling for 2.
Oh.
Nobody saw it.
Oh.
I kicked the extra point, made it 20-14. And as he said, I was signaling for 2. Nobody saw it. Frank kicked the extra point, and we win the ball game. But he said, before that, he said Frank was over on his knees praying that they'd score a touchdown because he didn't want to have to kick a field goal. That was Bobby. That's how he was like that. But like I said, he and I've talked to you about, he was more than a football coach. He was a mentor, and cared more about us as individuals as we moved on in our life than basically what we did as athletes. And he did, and his door was always open, except when he called me into the office and shut the door, and you couldn't get out. He had a very small office. If he moved his chair back, he would his bookcase. When you came in and you sit down in your chair, you couldn't go anywhere because the wall was right behind you. And I was in there a couple of times, experiencing his guidance. And, like I said, to me, he gave the invitation, for me to put Christ in my life first, get my life straightened out. He called me in the office one other time because I skipped first 2 practices of winter workouts. And he had already told me, he said he wanted me to kick in spring of 71. And so what he called me in for is, he said, "Are you trying to make a fool out of me?" Straight words right out of his mouth. I said, "No, sir." "But why?" He said, "I spent all winter talking to the coaches that I wanted you to do all the kicking in spring ball. Nobody else, just you. And I'm going, what do you mean? What do you mean? He said, you're going to do all the kicking. Nobody else is. That's it. And I'm going, okay. And he said, so you'll be there tomorrow. And I said, yes, sir. That's kind of the way it left. And so I was there, and he did not go back on his word. The only time I didn't kick off was I lost a contact lens, and Dickie Hart went out and did a kickoff for me while I was putting my contact lens back in. But I made 5 out of 7 field goals and 9 out of 10 extra points. And I have a letter from Coach Bowden telling me that although I performed admirably, that he didn't feel that I could do better than people that they already had. So he couldn't offer me a scholarship, but I wanted to come back in the fall, that I would have a chance. And he was true to his word. And I came back in the fall. I had a chance. This is the 71 season. And by the end of the first game, I was going to do all the kicking for field goals, but not extra points. Bill Samuelson was still doing that.
Great.
And like I said, and he was like that with everybody on a team. If you had a problem and you needed to talk to him, the door was open. Or if he needed to talk to you, but he didn't browbeat anybody. He just was basically wanting to make you a better football player, a better human being, and so I was really, really upset when he died. I was at a picnic, and one of the sports writers came up to me and said, Did you know that Coach Bowden died? As a matter of fact, Major Harris was there with me. He was a parade marshal, and I was just taken back by that. And I had to sit down, and because he's one of those people who thought would live forever. Like that's the kind of guy he was, and of course all the things that he did will probably live forever through all the people he's touched.
That's right.
So
yep, we've heard that from player after player after player, but through this venue, and I'm sure it holds true with all of you. We're running just a little short of time here.
Okay.
Real quickly, we'd like to hear about what you did after you got out of WVU. A little short synopsis of your career afterwards. We'd like to hear what you did.
I went right to work. I was with the Pittsburgh Steelers for 6 weeks. Competing against Ray Jarrella, and I got that little thing from Chuck Clausing because he knew the Rooney family, and of course all these guys are in the Hall of Fame now that were there because that was the first year they won the Super Bowl. So I did. So while I was doing that, I was also director of Parks and Recreation for one of the counties close by, and I worked with Bill McKenzie, and then Ann, who we got married. She finished her master's degree in speech therapy, and so she applied for a job down here in Jackson County. And I'm going, why did you do that? She said, that was the only place to get a job. And she said, you can get a job down there. And I said, where? She said, Kaiser Aluminum. Your dad works there. And so guess what? I went and spent 5.5 years at Kaiser Aluminum in the purchasing department as a foreman in the storeroom. And then they had a big layoff in 1981, 2,000 people, hourly and salary. Wow. And Ann said, okay, let's do this. You go back to school, get a master's degree in special education. I'm going, do I want to do that? I said, it's like almost 10 years since I've been in school. And she said, yeah. So I had to go and graduate from the other school down south with the master's degree in special education, and spent 25 years working with the behavioral disorder students and mental impairments.
Awesome.
And so that ended up getting me involved in Special Olympics. I did spend 30 years with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes as a volunteer. 10 of those years, I was the state volunteer director of FCA, which obviously Bobby Bowden, had an influence on me there. And so The education part of it put me in touch with the students. I also coached youth league wrestling, youth league football, and then I coached several years at Ravenswood High School as freshman coach and assistant varsity coach. And then I retired several years ago. Gosh, 2009. It's been a long time. And since that time, I've been spending a lot of time with Special Olympics athletes. And I do have a meeting Monday night with our group because we're getting ready for volleyball season. And that's a big deal. We just finished, with, the other things. I will tell you that I did coach a straight on kicker at Work County. Let's see, 4 or 5 years ago. She made 30 out of 33 extra points
Yep.
her senior year. And they were telling me straight on kicking is dead. And I'll tell you how I helped her. I told her to get a kicking shoe. That was about as much as I helped her. She had already made 19 out of 25 extra points her junior year, kicking with a soccer shoe with it tied up with that round toe.
Mm-hmm.
So the best thing I could do for her was I told her, get a kicking shoe. We got her a kicking shoe. And as far as I know, she kicked an extra point in a playoff game. As far as I know, she's the first girl to score a point in a state playoff game. But her name was Shelby. And that was the last she did. She went to West Liberty State University and graduated there already. And just a delightful young lady. We had nice talks about her faith and about using her faith to gain confidence in what she could do, and it worked out really good. Homecoming queen, I mean, God's put me in a different place, just because of my association with him and Bobby Bowden and and Chuck Clausing and Frank Signetti. I mean, how many times do guys get to play with 3 college Hall of Famers on the same team?
Yeah.
What guidance I had.
Oh, yeah. That's kudos for that, teaching that, especially. I did that for several years before I started teaching social studies. So I admire you for that. That's a very rewarding position to have. I know that. And a couple other things too. I just was sitting here thinking when he was talking about practicing the, blocking punts and on defensive back. Can you imagine Justin Tucker or somebody like that in the NFL practicing as a defensive back just because they needed bodies? I can't imagine. And then the last thing is you were talking about your size and how you were playing right there in the middle of the line and all that. I had a good friend that is from Jackson County that went to Glenville with me at the same time. We're good friends. He played football and he weighed 185 pounds and he was a defensive end. And he started for 4 years, as far as I know, at defensive end at 185 pounds. His name is Joe Parsons. We call him Happy Joe. I don't know if you know who Happy Joe Parsons is.
Happy Joe. Yeah.
He and I are pretty close friends. We've been friends since college. So that made me think of him when you were talking about your size. I tell you what, Frank, these some fantastic stories. We love hearing this. And we're about out of time, but we want to let you know that we would be glad to have you back anytime you're available, because we love to hear these stories.
Well, I was nervous about this. I didn't know what you were telling me anything, but I do want to make a comment about the Mountaineers.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think with the punter and the place kicker they have back, Michael, and let's see, Oliver, since the punter and kicker.
Yeah.
I think they're in good hands with those guys. And I know that Michael wants to get more of those kickoffs into the end zone.
Yeah.
And I still, in all those games, never had a kickoff return for a touchdown.
Wow.
Never. Okay. And that's because our guys covered, or I did. They took pride in that. Like the first time I went to kick off, I asked them, what should I do? I didn't have any pads in my pants or anything.
Mm-hmm.
They told me go down and kick the kick, make the tackle. Took Leon Jenkins was a safety.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I went down and made the tackle because they didn't expect me to go downfield.
That's right.
Oh, it was against Boston College, and everybody says, "Well, how'd you do that?" And I said, "I just downfield, and nobody hit me."
Yeah.
So you were playing in a game with no pads?
What's that?
You were playing in a game with no like thigh pads or hip
I
pads?
never wore thigh pads or knee pads or hip pads.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I think you're absolutely correct, Frank, with Oliver and Michael. That on the special teams, we all know, and we looked at these statistics after the season. It's not the punting and it's not the field goal kicking. It's the basically getting the ball into the end zone on touchbacks. WVU ranked very low nationally,
Right.
and also the performance of the other team on kickoffs. I think the three touchdowns. 95 yards or more, I think, against us last year.
Yeah. Back to back.
Yeah, it was just against Baylor, just terrible.
And
But,
I mean, you could literally see it opening up.
That's right.
And I'm going,
Yep.
Something's not right here.
Well, WVU has made it a priority, and both in terms of on the offensive side of kickoff and also on the defensive side. And I know they're taking it very seriously. That was a big issue in the spring, and it's continuing. So that's hopeful.
Sure is.
Well, I enjoyed that spring game. And the other thing is, I don't know of any team that have two quarterbacks as talented as what we have.
That's right.
Green and
Nico.
Nico. So what? One's left-handed, one's right-handed. They can both run the same offense.
That's right.
And you don't find a lot of teams that have that ability. One time you put somebody in, well, that takes away half the offense because of their skill ability. These guys can run the ball, they can throw the ball, and the receivers they have are fantastic. They catch the ball.
And they're going to get protection from that offensive line too.
Right, and that's right. And
Milam is God.
Look at the running backs we have.
Oh my God!
No, I mean, we've got some speed, we got some heft in there, and our coach talking about the linemen that are coming along. And like you're saying, some of them aren't ready yet, and this is their week to see who stands out.
That's right.
Because it's going to be the hardest week they've got. And I'm still saying, okay, where are the defensive backs? What are they saying about them? I know we don't have a Beanie Bishop, but maybe somebody will step up. We don't know.
I think they're very pleased with both the defensive back room and also the linebackers. And so, in fact, Coach Brown talked on Tuesday that the defense really, in one of the scrimmages, really came. They were very, very strong, and it was the offense that was inconsistent. Greg, this has just been fantastic.
It's been great. Yep, it's been
my
great.
God.
Can't imagine why you were nervous. You did a great job.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And next week, another person who is just tremendous and outstanding, Wes Turner, who played a decade later, has great stories as well. And, he was one of those guys, Frank, that became really the center of that team. He was a football player's football player. I mean, he was the guy that the team looked to as a leader, team-oriented, very tough, and a centerpiece of that team that program that really started to turn the corner in the earlier years of Don Nealon's tenure.
Yep, sure was. Looking forward to that. It's going to be a lot of fun. Frank, I want to tell you, I'm going to go ahead and get your contact from Frank Fear because I do a show on Thursday nights, and I need to get you on that show as well. So I'll be in touch with you about that. But we want to tell you again how appreciative we are of this and how much fun it was to listen to your stories.
Well,
great stuff. Great stuff. I know the audience enjoyed it.
I appreciate you guys contacting me. I'm getting old now, and I go, when will this happen? Oh, I got to tell you, I kicked an extra point last week.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I'm 73 years old, and I'm going, I can still do that. Ravenswood got a new AstroTurf field. I want to go see what it was like. It's perfect.
Most of the time, the end result is bad for a person our age that goes out and tries to do it one more time.
Hey, I walked off the field.
There you go. Good deal. Frank, again, thank you so much for joining us. Really enjoyed it. I know our audience did as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And
All right.
hey, go Mountaineers.
Go Mountaineers. Have a great night.
Okay, you too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Frank, again, awesome. Love hearing those stories.
You know, Frank told me, he said, I'm really nervous. And I said, you know, Frank, come on, you're going to be great. And he is. He's just, he, again, you know, we keep on saying this. We're almost like a wind-up doll. Is one of the functions here is just a parade of players that they're just phenomenal people. And and Frank certainly is.
Absolutely.
Oh boy, and I didn't know a lot of the stories he told. So
you know, you look at, you know, as a fan, you look at college football and you watch the games and all that. But you know, when you get right down to it, they're just people, and you hear these stories, and they're funny because you never dream that, you know, one of these guys, one of these coaches, Bobby Bowden's going to say this or do this, and it's pretty fun to listen to. And he had great stories. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's just wonderful, and West. It's so great to have West with us next week.
Yep.
We've
very well.
Oh my God, yeah, Jim Braxton's half brother, and he's just and his son was a great football player, offensive line player at North Carolina. And so we're looking forward to having him with us next week. So always good working with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Frank.
You too, Frank. And for all of you out there that watch and tune in, we appreciate you. And we look forward to coming to you again next Wednesday on Mountaineer Locker Room Then and Now. We'll have Wes Turner with us next week. Thank you and good night, everybody.